I heard my wife laughing with her friends about her secret affair, saying, "My clueless husband makes me coffee every morning after my wild nights." She had no idea what was coming next. Well, I'll tell you everything from the beginning. Riley and I had been married for 6 years, together for 9 total, and I thought we had built something solid in Portland. I'm Noah, 39, work as a regional sales manager for a manufacturing company. And Riley's 33, works as a marketing coordinator at some tech startup downtown. We had our routines. I'd make her coffee every morning before work. She'd come home late from what she called client dinners, and we'd settled into what I believed was a comfortable marriage. Sure, things weren't as passionate as they used to be, but that's normal after nearly a decade together, right? That's what I kept telling myself anyway. The weekend that changed everything started like any other. I had planned this golf trip with my colleagues. We'd been looking forward to it for months, booked this nice course about 2 hours away, made hotel reservations, the whole 9 yards. But Friday afternoon, the weather service issued severe storm warnings for the entire region. We're talking potential tornado activity, flooding, the kind of weather that makes you cancel outdoor plans without question. My buddy Dylan called me around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. "Noah, we're scrapping the golf weekend," he said. "Weather's going to be nasty, and honestly, none of us want to get stuck on some golf course when the sky starts falling." I was disappointed, sure, but also secretly a little relieved. Work had been intense lately, and the idea of a quiet weekend at home actually sounded pretty appealing. Riley had mentioned she was having Kayla and Tessa over for one of their girls' nights, which usually meant wine, gossip, and them taking over our screened-in back porch until the early hours. Perfect. I thought I could surprise her by coming home early, maybe even join them for a drink, before retreating to give them their space. I've always gotten along well with her friends, and Kayla, especially, always seemed to enjoy my company. The drive home felt different somehow, like I was carrying this little secret gift of surprise. I even stopped at the grocery store to pick up that expensive wine Riley loves, but claims we can't afford regularly. I was actually excited to see the look on her face when I walked through the door unexpectedly. You know that feeling when you think you're about to make someone's day? That warm anticipation that makes you drive a little faster and smile to yourself? That was me, completely oblivious to what was waiting for me. I pulled into our driveway around 7:30, and immediately I could hear laughter coming from the back porch. Loud, slightly drunk laughter that carried across our neighborhood. Riley's laugh was always infectious, and hearing it mixed with Kayla's and Tessa's voices made me smile. As I grabbed my bag and the wine from the car, I decided to go through the front door and surprise them from inside the house rather than walking around back immediately. Sometimes the element of surprise makes these moments even better. I unlocked the front door as quietly as possible, set my bag down in the entryway, and headed toward the kitchen to maybe prepare their wine surprise properly. That's when I heard it. Riley's voice, slightly slurred, but crystal clear, drifting through the open patio doors. "I'm telling you guys, I've got the perfect setup," she was saying. And something in her tone made me freeze in the kitchen. "Noah makes me coffee every morning like the devoted little husband. Never questions where I've been the night before. And I get to have the best of both worlds." Kayla's voice chimed in. 3 years, though, Riley. How do you keep it going?" 3 years. Keep what going? My heart started beating differently, like it was suddenly working harder to pump blood through my body. "It's easy when your husband is that trusting," Riley continued, and I could hear the clink of wine glasses. "I just tell him I'm at client dinners, and meanwhile I'm at Cole's apartment doing things Noah hasn't even thought of in years." The laughter that followed felt like ice water in my veins. Tessa's voice joined the conversation. "And he never suspects anything, even with you coming home so late?" "Are you kidding?" Riley's voice was getting louder, more animated. "Last month, when Noah's mom had that emergency surgery and he was at the hospital all night, I told him I was too overwhelmed to visit her, too emotional to be around hospitals. You know where I actually was? At Cole's place, having the time of my life while my pathetically trusting husband held his mother's hand alone." The wine bottle in my hand suddenly felt incredibly heavy. I set it down on the counter as carefully as possible. my hands shaking in a way I'd never experienced before. Kayla was practically giggling now. "You're terrible, Riley." "But honestly, if Noah's that clueless, that's kind of on him, right?" Riley agreed enthusiastically. "I mean, who believes that someone has client dinners 3 nights a week? Cole works in finance, makes twice what Noah does, and actually knows how to treat a woman. Meanwhile, Noah's just happy to have his little domestic routine and never asks any real questions." My legs felt unsteady, like the foundation of our house had suddenly shifted beneath me. 3 years, 3 entire years of lies, of me making her coffee every morning after she'd spent the night with another man. 3 years of client dinners that never existed. 3 years of me being the devoted little husband, while she laughed about it with her friends on our back porch, drinking wine I'd probably paid for. The betrayal hit me in waves. First the shock, then the humiliation, then something darker and more calculating that I'd never felt before. I stood there in my own kitchen, listening to my wife of 6 years mock me to her friends, and realized that the man I thought I was, trusting, loving, devoted, had been nothing more than a convenient fool in someone else's story. What happened next surprised even me. Instead of storming out there and confronting her, something cold and calculating took over. I quietly backed away from the kitchen, grabbed my bag, and slipped out the front door like a ghost. My hands were still shaking as I sat in my car, but my mind was crystal clear for the first time in years. I drove straight to my brother-in-law Marcus's house across town, and when he opened the door and saw my face, he didn't even ask questions. "Riley's having an affair," I said simply, and Marcus just stepped aside to let me in. Marcus has always been the steady one in the family, the kind of guy who thinks before he acts. And that night, he probably saved me from doing something stupid. "You sure about this, Noah?" he asked as we sat in his living room. "That sure, heard it straight from her mouth." Marcus nodded slowly. "What's your plan?" That's when I realized I actually had one, like my subconscious had been working overtime. "I'm going to document everything, get a lawyer, and make sure she can't spin this story when the time comes." Marcus offered me his guest room, and I spent the next 3 weeks living this bizarre double life. During the day, I'd go to work like nothing happened, come home to Riley, like the devoted husband she'd been mocking, and at night, I'd return to Marcus's to methodically plan my response. It was like I'd become a detective investigating my own life. The first breakthrough came when I remembered our shared cloud storage. Riley had always been careless with technology. And sure enough, when I logged in, there it was. 3 years of evidence she'd been too careless or too confident to hide. Photos of her and Cole at restaurants I'd never been to, wearing clothes I'd never seen, looking at him the way she used to look at me. Videos that made my stomach turn. Messages that were worse than the conversation I'd overheard, because they showed just how calculated this whole thing was. "Noah's working late again." Read one message from 2 years ago. "Perfect timing for us." Another one from last Christmas. "Told Noah I was shopping for his gift when I was actually picking out lingerie for you." The financial evidence was even more damning. Our joint credit card statements told a story I'd been blind to. Expensive dinners for two at restaurants she claimed were client meetings. Hotel charges during my business trips when she was supposedly home alone. Gifts from jewelry stores I'd never set foot in. The worst part was discovering charges from the day of my mother's emergency surgery, while I was holding my mom's hand in the hospital, terrified she might not make it through the operation. Riley had charged a romantic dinner for two in a hotel room. That's when the cold calculation turned into something sharper, something that felt like justice. I started taking photos of everything in our house, our wedding gifts, furniture we'd bought together, jewelry I'd given her, documents showing what we owned. I opened a separate bank account and started gradually transferring money. Nothing dramatic that would trigger alerts, just small amounts that added up over time. I found a divorce attorney who specialized in adultery cases, a sharp woman named Nora Bennett, who listened to my story without judgment and laid out my options with clinical precision. "With evidence like this," she said during our consultation, "you're in a very strong position." Oregon is one of the few states that still recognizes adultery as grounds for divorce, which affects alimony considerations. I gave her copies of everything, and she started building what she called my case file. Meanwhile, Riley was acting strange at home, almost like she sensed something had shifted. She started being unusually attentive, making dinner more often, asking about my day with renewed interest. "You seem different lately," she said one evening as I washed dishes. "Everything okay at work?" "Just busy season," I replied. And technically, that wasn't a lie. I was busier than I'd ever been, just not with work. She'd come up behind me sometimes and wrap her arms around me, and I'd have to fight every instinct not to pull away. The hardest part was maintaining the routine she'd mocked so brutally. Every morning I made her coffee, watching her drink it, while knowing she'd been with Cole the night before. Every time she said she had a client dinner, I'd kiss her goodbye and wish her luck, then head to Marcus's to continue my research. "This is incredible evidence," Nora told me during our second meeting. "But Noah, are you sure you want to go nuclear?" "Once we file these papers and present this evidence, there's no going back." I thought about my mother in the hospital, about 3 years of lies, about being called pathetically trusting by women drinking wine on my back porch. "I'm sure," I said, "but I want to time this perfectly." That's when I started planning the execution phase. I researched Cole, found out about his girlfriend Jenna through social media, confirmed Riley's work schedule, and mapped out exactly how this was going to unfold. The man who'd been making coffee for his cheating wife every morning was gone. In his place was someone who understood that trust, once broken this completely, couldn't be repaired. It could only be avenged. Riley had spent 3 years carefully constructing a lie, and I was going to spend 3 weeks carefully dismantling her entire world. The perfect opportunity came on a Tuesday morning in late October. Riley had been talking for weeks about her company's quarterly presentation, how important it was for her career, how the executives from the main office would be there to evaluate everyone's performance. She'd been stressed about it, staying up late preparing slides, practicing her pitch in front of the bathroom mirror. It was almost poetic. She'd built her entire deception around fake work events, and now a real work event was going to be the stage for her downfall. That morning, I made her coffee like always, kissed her goodbye, and wished her luck on her presentation. "You're going to kill it," I told her, and I meant it in ways she couldn't imagine. As soon as her car disappeared down our street, I put my plan into motion. I'd spent the previous evening creating anonymous email accounts and preparing packages of evidence for Jenna, Cole's girlfriend. I compiled the most damning photos and messages along with a simple note. "Thought you should know what your boyfriend has been doing for the past 3 years. I'm sorry you have to find out this way." I included screenshots of Cole's messages to Riley about their hotel meetups, photos of them together at romantic dinners, and credit card receipts showing his gifts to her. For Riley's sister Sophia, who had always been protective of Riley but had also always treated me fairly, I prepared a different package. Sophia deserved context, not just raw evidence. My note to her was longer, explaining how I discovered the affair, how long it had been going on, and how Riley had mocked me to her friends. I included the audio recording I'd made on my phone that night on the back porch. Yes, I'd gone back the next day and recorded their conversation when they inevitably repeated similar stories. I sent both packages via anonymous email accounts, timing them to arrive just as Riley's presentation was starting. The beauty of modern technology is that you can destroy someone's life from a coffee shop across town with just a few clicks. I then spent the day at work acting normal, fielding a few client calls, reviewing sales reports, but my phone was buzzing with updates from Marcus, who was monitoring social media for any developments. Around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, he texted me. Jenna's Facebook status just changed to single. Multiple angry posts about cheating boyfriends. An hour later, Cole's LinkedIn shows he's dealing with personal issues. Dude's in full panic mode. And then around 4 p.m., the text I'd been waiting for. "Riley's calling you," like a lot. I looked at my phone. 7 missed calls from my wife, 3 voicemails I didn't bother listening to, and a string of increasingly frantic texts. Noah, call me back, please. Something terrible happened. I need to come home. Please just answer your phone. Instead of responding, I left work early and headed home to execute the final phase. I'd already moved most of my important belongings to Marcus's over the past 3 weeks, just a little at a time so Riley wouldn't notice. What remained was mostly furniture and shared items that Nora had advised me to document but not take. I was sitting calmly at our kitchen table, divorce papers spread out in front of me, when Riley's car screeched into the driveway around 5:30. She burst through the front door like a hurricane, makeup smeared, hair disheveled, looking like her entire world had collapsed. Which, to be fair, it had. "Noah," she called out desperately. "Thank God you're home." The most insane thing happened today. Cole, you remember me mentioning Cole from work occasionally? Well, he's been stalking me. His girlfriend Jenna somehow got fake photos and messages and thinks we've been having an affair. It's completely crazy, but she sent them to Sophia too. And now everyone thinks, "Riley," I said quietly, not looking up from the papers. "Sit down." Something in my tone must have registered because she stopped mid-sentence. She saw the divorce papers, saw my calm expression, and I watched the color drain from her face as the pieces fell into place. "Those weren't fake photos," I continued. "Cole wasn't stalking you. I know about the 3-year affair. I know about the hotel rooms during my business trips. I know about the dinners you charged to our credit card while my mother was in emergency surgery. I know you told your friends I'm pathetically trusting while I make you coffee every morning after you spend the night with another man." Riley's legs gave out, and she collapsed into the chair across from me. "Noah, I can explain." "You already did," I said, sliding the divorce papers across the table. 3 weeks ago on our back porch, I heard every word. The next hour was like watching someone's personality completely fracture. First came denial. "This is all a misunderstanding. Cole and I are just friends. Those photos are from group events." Then anger. "You violated my privacy. You've been spying on me. This is psychotic behavior, Noah." Then desperate bargaining. "I'll end whatever this is with Cole. We can go to counseling. I'll do anything to fix this. Please don't throw away 9 years over a mistake." But I'd already thrown away 9 years, the moment I heard her laughing about what a fool I was. By evening, word had spread through her friend group. Kayla and Tessa, who had been so entertained by my supposed stupidity, were now distancing themselves from the scandal. Riley's carefully curated Instagram, full of photos of our perfect marriage, became a source of mockery as people connected the dots. Her professional reputation took a hit when her disastrous presentation, cut short by her emotional breakdown after Cole's breakup text, became office gossip. The woman who had spent 3 years managing a perfect deception couldn't handle a single day when the truth came out. And me, I felt nothing but cold satisfaction as I watched the house of lies she'd built collapse exactly as methodically as I'd planned it. The divorce proceedings moved faster than I'd expected, mainly because Nora had built such an airtight case that Riley's attorney recommended she accept our terms rather than drag things out in court. Oregon's adultery laws worked exactly as advertised. Riley's 3-year affair disqualified her from any meaningful alimony, and with all the financial evidence showing how she'd used our joint accounts to fund her betrayal, she walked away with essentially nothing but her personal belongings and half the debt. "Your husband was very thorough," I overheard her lawyer tell her during one of our final meetings. "Fighting this would just cost you more money you don't have." Riley's world continued to unravel in ways I hadn't even planned. Her work performance, already damaged by the disastrous presentation and the emotional fallout, never recovered. Her colleagues who knew about the affair treated her differently, and within 2 months she was demoted from marketing coordinator to administrative assistant. The tech startup culture that had once embraced her confident, social media savvy personality suddenly felt toxic when everyone knew about her personal drama. She quit after 3 months and moved back in with her parents in Spokane, a 40-year-old woman starting over in her childhood bedroom. Kayla and Tessa, her loyal friends who had found my trust so pathetically amusing, vanished from her life the moment the scandal broke. Turns out, friendship built on shared gossip and mockery doesn't survive when you become the person everyone's gossiping about. Her Instagram, once filled with carefully staged photos of our perfect marriage, went dark completely. Meanwhile, Jenna bounced back remarkably quickly. Marcus kept me updated through mutual social media connections. She started dating a guy from her yoga class within a month, and they looked genuinely happy together. Sometimes the trash really does take itself out. As for me, the first few months were harder than I'd expected. I'd been so focused on executing my plan that I hadn't prepared for the empty silence that followed. The apartment I rented felt hollow, and I found myself missing the routine of married life, even the fake version I'd been living. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Patel, who helped me work through the complex emotions of betrayal, revenge, and rebuilding. "You orchestrated a very effective response to a devastating betrayal," she told me during one session. "But now you need to focus on building something new rather than just tearing down something old." She was right. I joined a hiking group that met every Saturday morning, something I never could have done when Riley controlled our weekend social calendar with her fake client events and girls' nights. The mountains around Portland became my sanctuary, and the people I met there knew nothing about my divorce drama. They just saw Noah the hiker, Noah who always brought extra trail mix, Noah who had a decent sense of humor, and didn't mind driving to the more remote trails. Through the hiking group, I met Elise, a nurse practitioner who'd moved to Portland for a fresh start after her own difficult breakup. We started as hiking partners, became friends, and eventually something more. She knew about my divorce, but wasn't intimidated by it. She understood that sometimes you have to blow up your old life to build a better one. 4 months after the divorce was finalized, I was grabbing coffee before a Saturday hike when I saw Riley sitting alone at a corner table. She looked different, older, more tired, but also somehow more genuine than she'd appeared in years. Our eyes met, and instead of the dramatic confrontation I might have expected, she simply walked over to my table. "Noah," she said quietly, "I know I'm probably the last person you want to see, but I wanted to say something if you'll let me." I gestured to the empty chair across from me, curious despite myself. "I'm moving to Seattle next week," she continued. "Starting completely over. New job, new city, new everything. And before I go, I needed to tell you that I'm sorry. Not sorry I got caught. Not sorry things ended badly. But genuinely sorry for what I did to you. You didn't deserve any of it." There was no manipulation in her voice. No angle. No attempt to rewrite history. Just a broken person taking responsibility for her choices. "Thank you for saying that," I replied. "And I meant it. I hope Seattle works out for you." We sat in silence for a moment, and I realized something remarkable had happened. I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no sadness. Just indifference towards someone who had once been the center of my universe. That evening, I deleted all the evidence files from my computer, my phone, and my cloud storage. Nora had advised me to keep them indefinitely, but I didn't need them anymore. Riley had learned that choices have consequences, and I had discovered that my own resilience was stronger than I'd ever imagined. 3 weeks later, Elise and I went on our first official date, to a restaurant Riley and I had never been to. We ordered wine I'd never tasted, and talked about futures we were building, rather than pasts we were escaping. The devoted little husband was gone, but the man who'd replaced him was someone I actually liked. Sometimes new beginnings aren't about loss. They're about finally becoming who you were always meant to be.